Okay, let's dive right into one of the biggest questions out there, one that affects pretty much every living thing. Why do we age? It's a process we all go through, but the real reasons behind it are this incredible mix of our genes, evolution, and just the wear and tear of being alive.
It just seems like a fact of life, right? You're born, you live, you get old, you die. But when you really start to look across the animal kingdom, you realize aging is definitely not a one-size-fits-all deal. I mean, some animals live for centuries, others are gone in a flash. So while it feels inevitable, the way it happens is super diverse and packed with scientific mystery.
So to kick things off, let's just compare ourselves to a creature that basically laughs in the face of aging, the clam. Now, for a 100-year-old person, making it to 101 is, a pretty big deal. The odds aren't great, but a 100-year-old clam, it's just hitting its stride. And why is that? Well, because unlike us, it has this almost perfect ability to repair any damage that happens to its body. It's essentially hitting a reset button over and over again.
That begs a huge question then. If a clam can do it, why can't we? Our bodies are constantly fixing themselves. Cuts heal, bones mend. So what's stopping that process from just going on forever? And this question leads us to our first major clue. And trust me, it's a big one. Evolution.
This is where the whole idea gets turned on its head. What if aging isn't a flaw in our design? What if it's not a bug, but an actual feature, a critical part of some grand evolutionary strategy?
All right, quick high school biology refresher. Natural selection. It's that simple, powerful idea that traits helping an organism survive and have kids are the ones that get passed down. Survival of the fittest. You know the drill.
But hang on, that creates a huge paradox, doesn't it? If the whole point of the game is to survive and reproduce, shouldn't evolution be selecting for creatures that live forever and just keep on having babies? Why would it ever favor a process that makes us weaker, frail, and eventually kills us? It just doesn't seem to add up.
Well, the answer might be that evolution is playing the long game. It's not always about what's best for one single individual right now. It's about the survival and stability of the entire group, the whole ecosystem. Think about it. What's good for one lion? Catching every gazelle in sight would be a total disaster for the lion species. They'd eat all their food and starve.
So here's the crucial point, and it's kind of mind-blowing. Aging, while obviously bad for you and me as individuals, might actually be a brilliant feature for the species as a whole. It guarantees that older generations move aside for new ones. This turnover allows the species to adapt way faster to new threats like climate change or a new virus. It stops one group from hogging all the resources.
Okay, so if evolution is the grand architect that came up with the strategy, what are the actual tools and mechanisms at work inside our cells? How is this aging program actually written into our DNA? One really interesting theory comes down to our sex chromosomes. In species like us humans, females get 2 X chromosomes. So if one of those has a harmful mutation, the other healthy one can usually step in and cover for it. It's exactly like having a spare tire. But males with 1X and that much smaller Y chromosome, well, they don't have a spare. If there's a problem on their X chromosome, there's no backup. The flaw is exposed. And the effect of this is not small. It's huge. Across a whole bunch of different species, having that genetic backup gives females an incredible survival advantage. On average, they live almost 21% longer than males. That unguarded X is a serious vulnerability. Now for another huge piece of this puzzle, you'll find it at the very, very tips of your DNA strands. They're called telomeres, and they're basically these little protective end caps made of repeating bits of genetic code. The absolute best way to think about them is to picture the little plastic tips on your shoelaces. You know, the aglets? Just like those tips stop your shoelace from unraveling and becoming a frayed mess, telomeres protect all the important genetic code in your chromosomes from getting damaged every time a cell divides.
So this whole process acts like a ticking clock, a biological countdown. Every single time a cell splits in two, a tiny little piece of that telomere cap gets snipped off. It gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And after about, say, 40 to 60 divisions, those telomeres get so short they can't protect the DNA anymore. And at that point, the cell just stops dividing. It enters old age, what scientists call senescence, and eventually it dies.
But wait, there's more happening inside our cells. You can think of this next part as a kind of vicious cycle. Our tiny cellular power plants, the mitochondria, they create all the energy we need to live. But in the process, they also create these damaging byproducts called free radicals. These free radicals then turn around and damage the mitochondria themselves, which in turn causes them to produce even more free radicals. It's a destructive feedback loop that just wears our cells down from the inside.
Okay, let's zoom back out from that microscopic world for a second, because it's not all just about what's happening inside our cells. The bigger picture, an animal's lifestyle, its size, its environment, all of these things have a massive impact on its lifespan.
I mean, just look at how incredibly different the pace of life can be. It's just wild. At one extreme, you've got the mayfly. Its entire adult life can be over in less than 24 hours. Its only job is to reproduce, and then it's done. And then at the other end, you have creatures that literally live for centuries.
And this leads to a really fascinating theory called the heartbeat hypothesis. The idea is that most mammals, regardless of their size, get a lifetime budget of roughly 1 billion heartbeats. A tiny little mouse, its heart racing at 600 beats per minute, just burns through its budget in a couple of years. But a huge elephant, with its slow, steady pulse of 30 beats a minute, it takes decades to use up that same allotment. It seems the faster you live, the faster you age.
So it's pretty clear it's not just one thing, right? It's a whole cocktail of factors. Your size, your metabolism, those are huge, but so is your lifestyle. Being a social animal like an elephant or a human provides protection and support, which extends your life. And just being able to escape predators, like a bat that can fly away versus a mouse stuck on the ground, that gives you a massive survival boost.
All right, so after looking at the grand evolutionary strategy, diving down into the nuts and bolts of our cells, and looking at life's big picture, what's the final verdict? Why do we get old and die? The truth is, there's no single, simple answer. Aging is this incredibly complex tapestry that's woven from a ton of different threads. It's a trade-off that helps the species survive in the long run. It's a pre-written program in our genes. It's the slow, steady buildup of damage just from the act of living, and it's a direct result of an animal's unique strategy for navigating the world.
And at the end of the day, it all comes back to this one fundamental principle of biology. Aging isn't just some random decay. It's a process that has been meticulously shaped by millions of years of natural selection, always trying to find that perfect balance between the needs of the individual and the future of the entire species.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought to chew on. We're all born with this genetic blueprint for aging, but we also know that our lifestyle and our environment matter a lot. So the real question for science, and for every single one of us, is how far can we actually push the boundaries that nature has set for us?